My name is Dolores Gibbons. I'm 72 years old, and like many women my age, I spent most of my life taking care of others, raising a daughter, helping with grandkids, doing what I thought a good mother and grandmother should do. I never asked for much. I thought love and loyalty would come back around if you gave them freely. But recently, I learned the hard way that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. This story isn't just mine, it's a warning about what can happen when we ignore the little signs, when we assume our family would never cross a line, and about how easy it is, especially as we get older, to fall into financial traps because we don't want to believe someone close to us could take advantage. If you're watching this, I hope my story helps you think twice, not to live in fear, but to protect yourself before it's too late. It was already late afternoon when I arrived at Amanda's house. The sky was that soft orange-grey that only shows up in the colder months when the sun doesn't so much set as disappear behind a blanket of clouds. I had on a thin jacket, the only one I ever wore when I wasn't planning to stay long, and in my hand was a flat folder, just a few papers, nothing heavy, some bank statements, overdue notices, and one letter from Clarion Finance. My fingers clutched it tighter than I realized as I stood on the front step. The house was small but clean, nestled between identical little homes on a narrow city street. The porch light hadn't been turned on yet, though dusk was already settling. I rang the doorbell once, twice. My breath came short, whether it was the cold or my nerves, I wasn't sure. When the door swung open, it was Brittany who answered. Her expression flickered. "Grandma, what are you doing here this late?" Her voice held that mix of surprise and irritation, like I had disrupted something, like I didn't quite belong on her doorstep anymore. I tried to steady myself. My voice, when it came, was firm. "I came to ask why you used my name to take out a credit loan." Her eyes widened immediately. What? What are you even talking about?" Before she could say more, Amanda stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She was wearing a sweatshirt and leggings, her hair pulled into a quick bun. "Now what's going on? Why are you here, Mom? What are you stirring up now?" I walked past Brittany, stepped slowly into the living room, and set the folder down on the coffee table. My hands were shaking just enough to make it hard to line the papers up neatly. "These are the debt letters. Collection agencies keep calling. I went to the community center, someone helped me look into it. They said Brittany used my name, used my identity to borrow money." The room fell into a stunned silence for half a second. Then both of them started talking at once. Brittany barked, "You're accusing me of stealing now? Grandma, seriously, I don't even know what these papers are." Amanda shook her head and let out a bitter laugh. "You probably got scammed again. You're always clicking on strange links. Don't you remember when you lost your Facebook last year? You're always falling for something." "I didn't click anything," I said quietly, then gathered my strength. "After we filmed that TikTok together, a month later I got the first letter. The lawyer said it looked like someone used facial biometrics." "Brittany, you were the one who asked me to film that." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "I told you to stop messing with those apps that scan your face, and now you're blaming Brittany." Brittany stepped in again, crossing her arms. "All I did was show you a filter. You were laughing, you said it was funny. Everyone does those videos, it's not some kind of scam. You're talking nonsense." The words hit me like small stones, each one not enough to break skin, but together they wore me down. I stood there watching my granddaughter's face twist in annoyance, her eyes now full of something I hadn't seen before, disdain, disbelief, like I had become a burden to explain away. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came. I felt the air get caught somewhere between my chest and throat, thick and painful. They weren't listening. Worse, they didn't believe me, or they were pretending not to. Amanda's tone hardened. "Mom, I'm telling you, go home. Deal with whatever this is on your own. Stop bringing paperwork over like this is my problem." Brittany stood up abruptly, grabbing the papers I hadn't touched and shoving them back at me. "You need to leave right now. I don't want the neighbors seeing this. If you keep acting like this, I won't come to your house anymore." I reached out and took the folder, my fingers trembling, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked to the door slowly. The hallway felt longer than it had ever been. Behind me, I heard the click of Amanda's slippers on the tile, and then just before I stepped outside, the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed. It didn't scare me, it sealed something. The drive back to my town took about half an hour. I didn't want to go home, I couldn't, not yet. I needed to be somewhere with people, with lights, with warmth that didn't ask questions. So I parked along Main Street and walked to the little cafe I've been going to every weekend for years. It's nothing fancy, just a narrow space with old mismatched chairs, walls lined with used books and local art. By now, they know my usual: 1 cup of hot Earl Grey, no sugar, a splash of milk. The bell above the door jingled softly as I stepped inside. Most folks had already gone home for dinner, only a couple of patrons sat quietly, one reading a newspaper, another tapping away on a laptop. I took my usual seat by the window. The streetlights outside flickered on just as I sat down. I removed my gloves slowly, then reached into my handbag for my wallet. Tucked in the sleeve was the old photo I always kept, just one picture. Me, Amanda, and little Brittany, taken one summer at a roadside ice cream stand. Brittany was wearing a pink dress, her cheeks smeared with chocolate. In the photo, frozen in mid-laugh, I laid my hand over the picture, my fingertips trembling slightly. Something inside me buckled, not in anger, not even sorrow, just something hollow. The owner, Carla, walked over quietly with my tea. "Everything all right, Miss Givens?" she asked, her voice soft and familiar. I forced a small smile, not looking up. "I'm fine, dear, just needed a place to sit for a bit." She nodded and walked away without pressing. That was what I needed most, space to exist without explanation. I watched the world blur through the fogged-up glass. Car lights passed by in streaks. A couple walked by, their coats zipped up, heads close in conversation. I brought the cup to my lips. The steam curling against my face tasted like comfort and memory. Inside me, thoughts tangled like yarn, tight, chaotic, impossible to pull apart. The folder sat beside me on the table, closed now. I couldn't bear to open it again tonight. I didn't know what my next step would be, but I knew one thing with certainty: they thought I was confused. They thought I didn't understand, but I understood enough to know I was not crazy. My fingers tightened slightly around the teacup, chasing its warmth as it seeped through the porcelain. Outside the cafe window, dusk had deepened. The soft yellow light of the street lamps flickered through a light drizzle, the kind that left halos around passing car headlights. I stared out into the blur of people crossing the intersection, my tea untouched, cooling by the minute. Maybe it all began that afternoon Brittany came to visit. Even now, thinking back, I still struggled to believe it was real. It had been a quiet day, the kind I usually liked. The rain had stopped just after lunch, leaving everything slick and fresh-smelling. I had gone out to tend to the flowers on my front porch, just 3 pots of chrysanthemums I'd planted years ago that stubbornly bloomed every fall. I was crouched down, poking at the soil with a spoon because I'd misplaced my trowel again when I heard her voice behind me. "Hey, Grandma." I looked up. There she was, standing at the bottom of my steps, slightly out of breath. Her hair was damp, strands sticking to her cheeks like she had just walked through the drizzle. One hand held a brown paper bag with the bakery logo on it, the other a small white box tied with string. "Oh," I gasped, my heart lifting. "Brittany, you scared me. Look at you. Didn't even dry your hair. Come inside before you catch something." I ushered her in quickly, grabbing the kitchen towel from the counter and fluffing her wet hair with it like I used to when she was little. Her cheeks turned pink, maybe from the warmth or the fussing, I didn't care which. I was just glad she was there. "Long time no visit," I teased as she kicked off her sneakers. "I was beginning to think you forgot the way to Grandma's house." She grinned and plopped the bag on the kitchen table. "I brought cinnamon rolls and that tea you like, the kind with the little flowers on the box." We sat together for a while, just the two of us, sharing sweet bread and hot drinks. The kitchen smelled like sugar and cinnamon, and the windows fogged gently from the steam of our cups. She asked about my joints, about my neighbor's new fence, about the bird feeder that kept getting raided by squirrels. I asked about her job, her apartment, her cat that didn't like visitors. It felt like a piece of something lost had returned. My heart loosened. I thought maybe I had been too hard on her, Maybe I had misunderstood the silence between us these past months. Then, somewhere between her second cinnamon roll and the end of her tea, she perked up suddenly. "Grandma," she said, reaching for her phone. "Have you seen this TikTok trend? It's hilarious. You just do this little face scan thing, and it puts your face on some dancer. It's wild. Like, it looks real." I blinked. "A face scan? Oh honey, I don't know about all that. People online will laugh me off the internet." She laughed and waved a hand. "No one's gonna see it, it's private. I just want to try it. You'll love it, I promise. It's fun. Just a quick video, look straight at the camera, turn your head left and right, and say, 'Hello, this is me.' That's it." I hesitated, I felt silly, but her eyes were so bright, so excited. How could I say no? So I did what she asked. I sat up straight, looked directly into her phone, turned my head as she instructed, smiled awkwardly, and repeated the little line. "Hello, this is me," I said, laughing at how ridiculous I sounded. She filmed it, carefully tapping at her screen, adjusting angles, mumbling something about AI syncing. Then she walked off to the corner of the room and kept tapping for a few minutes. I didn't pay it much mind. I sipped my tea and looked out at the now drying sidewalk, thinking about nothing in particular. When she came back, she was grinning ear to ear. "Okay, Grandma, ready to see yourself dance?" I chuckled. "This I gotta see." She pressed play on the screen. I appeared, except I wasn't just sitting in my kitchen. I was dancing, spinning, clapping, moving to a pop song I didn't recognize. My face was fully animated and smiling like I was born for the stage. My eyes widened. "Lord have mercy," I whispered. "That's me. That's not edited or something?" She shook her head confidently. "Nope, that's the real deal. It's this new AI filter. It scans your face and pastes it on a character. It's totally safe, and honestly, a lot of older folks are doing it too." "You're trending, Grandma." I was stunned. I mean, it was me, but it also wasn't. Still, it was strangely delightful. I found myself laughing along, even a little proud that I could keep up with whatever new tech Brittany had brought home from the internet. She said it wasn't perfect and we should try again, so we did 2 more times. Each time I repeated the steps: look straight, turn, smile, speak. She adjusted the lighting, told me to relax my shoulders, fixed a stray hair. It felt harmless, fun even. By the time the light outside had softened into evening gold, she was packing up to go. "You sure you don't want to stay for dinner?" I asked, pouring her a fresh cup of tea. She glanced at her phone and smiled apologetically. "I'd love to, but I've got something later. Next time, okay?" She gave me a quick hug, warm and tight, and headed toward the door. Just before stepping off the porch, she turned and added, "Oh, and Grandma, keep this our little secret, okay? When the video goes viral, I'll come back and show you." I laughed and waved. All right, I'll be waiting." I stood there for a while after her car pulled away, sipping the tea she didn't finish, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. I felt oddly proud. I'd stepped into something new, something modern. My granddaughter had wanted to spend time with me. That was all that mattered, or so I thought. A car horn honked outside the cafe, jerking me back into the present. The teacup in my hands had gone cold, and my shoulders ached. A young couple had just walked in, laughing, the girl still shaking rain off her coat. I looked down at my folded hands, then out the window again, this time with different eyes. That day, I believed Brittany had done something sweet for me, that she wanted to connect, to share a little joy. But I didn't know what that filter really did. I didn't know what it could unlock, what it could steal. I only knew now that I had let her capture something very real: my face, my voice, my trust. The tea had cooled in my hands, long forgotten. I hadn't sipped it in a while, not since the memories began flooding back in vivid, biting pieces. I stayed still in my corner booth, the cafe now quieter than before. Only the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional clang of a coffee mug in the sink reminded me that time hadn't stopped. My eyes stayed fixed on the edge of the saucer while inside me, another reel of memory had started to play, the one I'd been trying not to relive. It was a Monday morning, early February, I think, Cold, still dark outside. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a small towel laid out, trimming my nails with the same clippers I'd had for over a decade, just something to pass the time before the kettle boiled. Then the phone rang. It was the landline, the one I rarely used unless it was for calling the pharmacy or talking to someone from church. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number with an out-of-state area code. Normally, I'd have let it go to voicemail, but something in me reached for the receiver. Mrs. Dolores Gibbons, a woman's voice asked, clipped and rehearsed. This is a collections representative from Clarion Finance. We're calling regarding your $15,000 loan opened on the 12th of last month. Your first payment is past due. If we don't receive a response, your credit will be impacted and late fees will be applied. I paused, blinking. I think you've got the wrong person. I haven't taken out any loans. She repeated the name, even spelled it, then said my full address. That's when my stomach turned. There must be some mistake, I said. I never signed anything. I haven't borrowed a cent. Please remove my name from your list. Then I hung up calmly, trying to convince myself it was a scam, just some desperate trick like those robocalls about car warranties or phony IRS threats. That was all. But it wasn't. In the days that followed, the calls began to multiply, 3 to 4 times a week, new voices from different banks, different debt collectors. Some were polite, some were curt, some left robotic voicemails that felt like small bombs. This is your final warning. Legal action may follow if payment is not received, the kind of message that makes your breath stick in your throat long after the beep. I stopped answering the phone altogether. Even the sound of the ring made my heart flutter, sharp and sudden, like a bird panicking in a closed room. Every time I passed the receiver, I'd glance at it with dread, wondering what new number might show up next. Then came the letters. One afternoon, just as the mail truck rattled away, I shuffled out to the front steps. The wind had picked up, and a few brittle leaves scraped across the pavement. I opened the mailbox and found it stuffed, 6 envelopes in total, all stamped with the logos of banks I didn't recognize: Northern Heights, Fulton Capital, Brightstream Lending. Inside, notices of new credit accounts, confirmation of card activations, welcome letters from services I had never signed up for. There were statements showing purchases I didn't make, electronics, furniture, even a flight to Phoenix. Everything was addressed to me, my name, my home address, but the email on the online accounts I'd never seen before. I walked back inside and dropped into my armchair, the envelopes spread out in my lap. I stared at the words, initial payment, statement, balance, minimum due. But they made no sense. It was like reading someone else's bills, except they all carried my name. My hands began to tremble. I picked up one of the letters and called the customer support line listed at the bottom. A young woman answered, and after verifying my name, birthdate, and the last 4 digits of my social security number, she began speaking like it was just another Tuesday. Yes, we see your account was opened online on January 28th. We used biometric facial recognition to confirm identity, as well as matching address and SSN. All verification matched. The account is valid. No, I interrupted, my voice suddenly cracking. That can't be. I never opened any account. I don't use apps. I don't even know how to do that kind of thing. There was a pause. I'm sorry, but our records indicate all standard identity protocols were followed. If you suspect identity theft, you'll need to file a police report and dispute the charges through proper legal channels. She spoke gently, but it didn't matter. Her voice faded out like a bad radio signal as the reality set in. Someone had used my face, my name, my life to borrow money. When I hung up, my hand stayed frozen over the phone for a long while. I didn't move, I couldn't. There was a strange sensation creeping up my spine, like ice melting in reverse. Been violated, not physically, but in a way that made me question what parts of me were still mine. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I didn't sleep either. I sat in the living room with the TV on low volume, not watching, just listening to the murmur of voices that didn't demand anything from me. The shadows in the room stretched long and thin like questions I couldn't answer. Even the little things changed. At the grocery store, I avoided the cashier I usually chatted with. At the post office, I kept my sunglasses on, as if shame was something you could hide behind dark lenses. The clerk at the corner store, a kind woman named Joyce, noticed my silence. "You all right, Miss Dolores?" she asked one morning when I barely responded to her greeting. I nodded. "Just tired, is all." But it wasn't tiredness, it was fear, confusion, and something deeper, an ache that I didn't have a name for yet. Eventually, when the burden got too loud, I called Amanda. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my cell phone for 10 full minutes before pressing the green button. My voice was careful, almost apologetic. "Amanda, I don't really know how to explain this, but I've been getting debt collection calls. I swear to you, I haven't borrowed any money, not a single dollar, but they keep saying I owe." Her sigh cut me off like a slap. "Mom, seriously, did you click on something again? I've told you over and over not to mess with strange links. This is what happens. Scammers get your info, then open accounts. You have to stop doing this." I tried to explain, but I didn't click anything. "I swear, I just need to figure out what to do now." Amanda's voice turned flat. "You're gonna have to deal with it yourself. I've got enough going on with Brittany. We don't have the money to cover your debts." "Mom, I'm not asking for money," I said quietly. "I just thought maybe you could help me understand what's happening." But she'd already moved on. "I've got to go. Let me know how it turns out." And just like that, the line went dead. I placed the phone down carefully, as if it were made of glass. My heart wasn't racing, it had already passed that stage. Now it just hurt, quietly, steadily. I wasn't looking for a rescue. I wasn't expecting her to throw me a rope and pull me out. I only wanted her to say something kind, something like, "Don't worry, Mom. Tell me everything." But that moment never came, and somehow that silence stung more than the voices on the phone demanding money I never took. I sat alone in the living room, the soft amber glow from the table lamp casting long, tired shadows across the carpet. The TV was off. No music played, just the ticking of the wall clock and the distant hum of a neighbor's lawn mower winding down for the evening. Outside, dusk was settling, drawing the curtains of the day. I glanced up at the bookshelf in front of me, where an old photo sat tucked into the corner, slightly tilted in its wooden frame. It was one of the few things I hadn't moved in years, a picture of me, my late husband Harold, and Amanda when she was just a little girl. Her cheeks were round and flushed, one hand gripping the hem of my dress. Harold stood behind us, arms resting protectively on our shoulders. We looked complete, happy. My eyes lingered on that photo, and something inside me tugged loose. I whispered into the still air, not sure if I was speaking to Harold, to myself, or just to the void. I raised her, gave her money to help with the down payment on her house, held her when her husband died, and now she tells me to take care of myself. I felt the words echo inside me, not because they were loud, but because they were sharp. It wasn't the unpaid bills that hurt the most, it wasn't the missing money or the overdraft notices. It was that sentence, that cold, clipped sentence from my own daughter, "Take care of yourself," like I was a burden she couldn't shake off fast enough. That's when it truly sank in. It wasn't about dollars, it was about dignity. And someone I had loved my whole life had treated mine like it was disposable. I stayed there a while longer, staring at nothing. Then slowly, I leaned forward and opened the small drawer built into the side table. Tucked beneath some old utility receipts and a few clipped coupons, I found what I was looking for, a worn business card, corners slightly frayed, Michael Green, Legal Aid Volunteer, Buncombe County Senior Support Services. The ink was faint from time, but I could still make out the number. I hesitated, the card resting against my palm. I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since the legal workshop on elder fraud at the community center. But something in me said, now, before it gets worse. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. After a few rings, a steady, warm voice answered. "This is Michael." I cleared my throat. "Mr. Green, my name is Dolores Gibbons. We met a while back at the senior event. You gave a talk on financial abuse." There was a pause. "Yes, Mrs. Gibbons, I remember. Are you all right? I think I might need some help. Something's not right with a few bank letters I've received, overdrafts, accounts I never opened. I don't want to assume the worst, but..." He cut in gently. Breathe. Okay, come by my office tomorrow. Bring every document you've received, anything that looks suspicious. We'll go through it together. For the first time in days, I exhaled fully. The knot in my chest didn't unravel completely, but it loosened just enough to let in a sliver of air. Thank you, I said quietly, gripping the phone with both hands. Thank you for not making me feel like I'm crazy. You're not crazy, he said, and you're not alone. I hung up and sat back. The photo on the shelf hadn't moved, but something inside me had. Maybe, just maybe, I had taken the first step toward pulling the truth out of the shadows. The morning after the last voicemail, I remember wrapping myself in my old thick coat, the navy blue one with the missing button and fraying cuffs. I didn't even bother to fix my hair properly. I slipped the folder of letters, bank notices, and printouts into my tote bag and drove out toward the edge of town. It was cloudy, the kind of heavy gray that felt like it wanted to rain but couldn't quite cry. The legal aid office was on the second floor of a fading strip mall, wedged between a check-cashing place and a shuttered nail salon. The sign on the glass door read, Community Legal Services, Michael Green, Attorney at Law. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old carpet and printer toner. Michael was already behind his desk when I walked in, rearranging a stack of papers. He looked up as I entered and offered a kind smile. Good morning, Mrs. Givens, he said. Come in, have a seat. Let's take a look at what you've brought. I nodded, lowering myself into the chair across from him. My hands were cold and slightly damp from the chill outside, and I held the tote like a shield across my lap. I had no idea what I was about to learn, only that I needed to understand what was happening to me before I lost any more sleep or sanity. Michael took the papers one by one, bank statements, letters from collections, credit card activations, and spread them across the desk in a fan shape. He flipped through them with practiced fingers, his eyes narrowing slightly as he read. Have you ever provided your full name, birth date, and social security number to anyone recently? He asked gently. No, I replied. Only people in my family even know that stuff. My daughter Amanda, my granddaughter Brittany. That's it. He nodded slowly, tapping one of the letters. Do you remember clicking on any suspicious links in emails or texts? I shook my head. I don't open anything strange. I'm not good with technology. Has anyone filmed you lately? Your face, I mean, up close? That's when something clicked. My breath caught. Yes, I said quietly. She came over about a month ago and said she wanted to film me for a TikTok video, some kind of filter thing. Michael's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he said nothing at first. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. That may be it. What you described, looking into the camera, turning your head, it sounds like biometric facial verification. It's often used to authenticate identity when opening accounts online. If someone had your SSN and used that video footage, they could impersonate you. I swallowed hard, my fingers clenched in the fabric of my coat. I offered something else, almost in a whisper. I have cameras at home in the kitchen, one of those home security things. It records all day. Michael sat forward. Do you still have access to the footage? I nodded. Would you like to see it? Less than an hour later, we were in my house. I sat beside him in the kitchen while he reviewed the security footage from the day Brittany had visited. The feed wasn't high definition, but it was clear enough to make everything unmistakable. There was Brittany placing her phone directly in front of me on the kitchen table. There was me, smiling nervously, following her instructions, turning my head left, then right, then saying into the lens, "Hello, this is me." Michael played it back twice, leaning close to the screen. The audio captured Brittany's voice clearly. The way she nudged me gently with her hand to fix my posture, told me to smile, to look natural. The entire interaction was casual, innocent even, except it wasn't. This sequence, he said, pointing at the screen, it's consistent with what banks and fintech services use to verify someone's identity through facial recognition. This video alone could be used to unlock a dozen accounts. I felt my breath falter, watching myself on that screen, trusting, laughing, trying to keep up with the younger generation. It made me feel like a fool, like I'd handed her the keys to my life without even realizing it. From there, We visited the first of the 3 banks that had sent me debt collection notices. I brought my state ID in the same stack of letters. The bank representative, a young woman with careful speech and a patient smile, typed something into her system and asked me to wait. A few minutes later, she returned with a printout. Each loan, she explained, was dispersed to a checking account at Chase Bank ending in 9183. She handed us the paper. The account name was clear: B. Dawson, Brittany Dawson. Every cent of those fake loans had gone straight into an account under her name. I didn't say a word. Couldn't. Michael leaned in gently. This is enough to pursue a fraud case, especially paired with the video footage. I nodded, but I didn't feel anything close to relief, just noise in my head, a dull roar of disbelief. Brittany, my own granddaughter? No. My mind tried to argue. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe she just helped someone else. Maybe she didn't know. But every excuse I conjured felt more absurd than the last. After visiting the final bank, I stepped out into the grey light of the afternoon like a ghost. The sidewalks were wet from an earlier drizzle. The street was quiet, except for a few distant horns. I walked slowly, shoes slick against the pavement, until I reached my car. I sat inside for a long time, keys in my lap, engine off, just staring through the windshield at nothing, not angry, not even hurt, just hollow. Then I drove back to Amanda's house. I had to know. I had to hear it from Brittany herself. I had to ask her why. But they didn't want to talk. They said I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. So I left, and on the way home, somewhere near the gas station at the corner of Belmont and Ridge, I drifted slightly over the white line, not even realizing it. The side mirror of a parked SUV caught mine. A loud snap jolted me back into my body. A man stepped out, mid-40s maybe, salt and pepper beard. Are you all right?" he asked. I rolled the window down, hands shaking. "I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention." He looked at the damage, nothing major, just the mirror, a few scratches on the paint. We agreed on a small cash payment. He didn't call the police, said it wasn't worth the trouble. But to me, it was a wake-up call, a slap to the face. Even the smallest damage, the tiniest crack, can't be ignored forever. Because the truth doesn't need to scream. Dream to be heard. It just needs to be seen clearly, undeniably, in your own handwriting or staring back from a security camera. I took a sip of tea. A couple walked into the cafe, laughter in their voices. The sound pulled me back from my thoughts. I looked around and realized I'd been sitting in the same seat for hours. I flagged down the owner quietly and asked for the check. It's time to go. When I stepped back into my house, it felt like the world outside had stayed loud just long enough to vanish behind me. The door clicked shut with a heavy thud, swallowing the remnants of tires on wet pavement, passing voices, city noise. Inside, there was nothing, just stillness and the faint hum of the refrigerator. My footsteps echoed as I hung my coat by the door. I walked into the kitchen, where the familiar smell of coffee grounds still clung to the corners like a habit I couldn't let go. I turned on the kettle, then stood there staring at the rust-colored backsplash tiles I'd always meant to replace. The click of the switch, the rising steam, the empty mug waiting on the counter, it all played out like muscle memory. Like I wasn't fully inside my body, I opened the cupboard, pulled out a sachet of instant coffee, and slowly poured hot water into the cup. The steam fogged my glasses. I didn't bother wiping them. I was tired, not in the way that could be cured by sleep, but in that bone-deep way that comes when your faith in something or someone begins to splinter. I carried the mug to my usual spot by the window, the one that faced the neighbor's yard. The porch light across the fence was on. A trio of little kids, maybe 7, maybe 10 years old, were playing tag around a large maple tree. Their laughter rose and fell like birdsong, their shadows stretched and shrank in the golden light. Bodies darted between patches of lawn like they didn't yet know what regret was. Brittany used to be like that. I used to tie her hair into 2 little braids, one on each side. She'd run barefoot across my grass, chasing butterflies, scaring squirrels. She'd beg me to blow bubbles from the old plastic wand we kept in the junk drawer just so she could pop them mid-air. She never stopped moving, never got tired. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me. I remember the first pair of shoes I bought her, red canvas sneakers from a shop downtown with creaky floorboards and an old woman who always offered kids a lollipop. Brittany had picked them herself, said they made her feel like she could run faster than the wind. I remember baking her birthday cake when she turned 10. She'd asked for a cat-shaped cake, and I stayed up until 1 a.m. trying to get the ears to stand up without collapsing. She didn't even notice the flaws, she just beamed in every photo, icing smeared across her cheek, arms around my neck. I remember how she used to climb into my bed on nights when her parents fought too loud in the next room, her small body curled into mine, her fingers clinging to my nightgown. I would hum the old lullaby my mother had once sung to me. I swore I'd protect her from all the brokenness she didn't yet understand. And then her father, my son, a drunk driver, a rainy road, a curve he'd taken 1,000 times before. Brittany was 15. I found her sitting in the hallway outside the ICU, legs drawn up, hoodie pulled over her head, eyes vacant like something inside her had been switched off. I held her that whole night in the waiting room, just the two of us under those harsh fluorescent lights. She didn't cry, not once, but her silence said more than tears ever could. I took time off from work, weeks, maybe months. I don't even remember exactly, I just knew I had to be there. I cooked, I cleaned, I walked her to school, I sat through awkward counselor appointments. I was her cushion against a world that had suddenly turned cruel and unpredictable. Later, when she decided to go to college, I dipped into my emergency savings, the account I'd been adding to slowly since before she was born. $8,000, that's what it cost for her first year. I didn't hesitate. I even bought her a new laptop, helped her pick out clothes so she wouldn't feel out of place on campus. She wanted to study marketing. I didn't really understand what that meant, but I nodded like I did. I just wanted her to feel supported, wanted her to know someone still believed in her. I told myself, she'll make it, she'll remember who helped her get there. And for a while, she did. When she first moved to the city 2 hours away, she called every Sunday evening. We talked about her classes, her roommate who always forgot to wash dishes, the overpriced coffee near her apartment. She sent me photos of her meals, her outfits, even a stray cat that slept near her front porch. But slowly, the calls got shorter, then they stopped altogether. The texts became fewer, less personal, more like replies out of obligation. One time, I messaged her, I hurt my knee, had to stay in the hospital overnight. She replied, oh no, hope you feel better soon, take your meds. That was it. I told myself she was busy. That's what young people were, busy, ambitious, always on the move. I didn't want to be the kind of old woman who guilt her family for living their lives, so I kept quiet. I waited. I filled the silences with crossword puzzles and afternoon TV. I never asked her for anything, not money, not favors, not even time. All I ever wanted was to feel like I still mattered, like I wasn't fading into the wallpaper of her life. So no, I don't believe Brittany was born to lie or cheat or take advantage of people who loved her. But something somewhere shifted. Maybe it was grief, maybe it was survival. Maybe she got tired of watching the world reward the selfish and punish the kind. I don't know. I just know the girl who once danced barefoot in my backyard, who kissed my cheek with jelly-covered lips and told me I was her favorite person in the whole wide world. That girl wasn't the same one who pointed her phone at my face and asked me to smile for a TikTok video. That girl didn't know. How do you look me in the eye and say you owe this money? You did this to yourself. But that's who Brittany became, and maybe that's the hardest part of getting old. Not the wrinkles, not the pain in your joints, but watching someone you once rocked to sleep become someone you no longer recognize. That night, after finishing my coffee, I folded the Afghan over my lap and sat there for a long time, listening to the laughter outside, watching the steam rise and fade, and wondering when exactly love had stopped being enough. Mrs. Dolores, daydreaming again? Planning to send people to Mars, are we? Eleanor's voice rang out across the yard like it always did, half joke, half check-in. I turned slowly to see her standing by her gate with a basket of eggs in one hand, bundled in her usual cardigan, a fleece jacket 2 sizes too big, sleeves rolled once. I tried to smile back, but my mouth could barely lift. No, I said quietly. Today I can't seem to think of anything at all. She came over and set the eggs down on my patio table with more force than necessary. I could already see she knew something was wrong. I told her briefly about the car accident and about the discovery that Brittany had opened multiple accounts under my name, that the total was now $30,000. I left out the part about the bank account trail, about the security footage, about the way Brittany had smiled as she left my house. Eleanor didn't say anything for a beat, then she slammed her basket onto the table. "You're still sitting here doing nothing," she barked. If that were my granddaughter, I'd drag her to court myself and make sure the judge had extra coffee to hear the whole damn thing. I looked away, the shame burned my chest. Not shame that I'd been fooled, but shame that I still wanted desperately for it not to be true. I still wanted her to walk through my door and say, "It was a mistake, Grandma. I didn't mean to," but she hadn't. She wouldn't. The next morning, I was peeling an apple at the kitchen counter when the knocking came, fast, firm, urgent. I opened the door, and there she was again, Eleanor, this time in walking shoes and a wool scarf, swinging her purse like it had a mission of its own. "Let's go," she said flatly. "I'm not letting you rot in guilt while your own blood steals from you." I was thinking I'd wait a little longer, maybe she'll come talk to me. "Think what you want," she snapped, "but if you don't get your coat now, I'm calling that lawyer myself and having him drag you to court in your slippers." I stared at her for a moment, and then I grabbed my coat. We went straight to Michael's office, the lawyer with tired eyes and a heart that didn't show off. I brought every document I had, copies of the loan notices, screenshots of the transaction trail, and the printout from the bank showing the Chase account in Brittany's name. Michael flipped through the pages slowly, occasionally nodding or making a small mark with his pen. "This is identity theft," he said matter-of-factly. "What they've done, especially with the use of facial footage for verification, qualifies under federal fraud statutes. We'll start by filing a formal complaint with your local police. That will pause all collection attempts and give us grounds to challenge the loans in court." My hands were resting on my lap. I didn't clench them, I didn't cry. I simply nodded. For the first time in months, I said, "I feel like I'm not crazy." We drove to the police department that same afternoon. The building was small, just 2 rooms and a hallway that smelled faintly of printer ink. I gave my statement. I told the officer I had not opened the accounts, that I had no knowledge of the loans or credit cards. I handed over the video, the statements, the name on the Chase Bank transfer history. The officer typed it all in silently, then handed me a copy of the case file. It was thin, just a few pages, but it felt like I was holding a shield. When we got back, Michael explained the next steps. He helped me contact the big 3 credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. With his help, I froze my credit, requested PIN locks, and added a fraud alert on my file. That way, no one, not even my own daughter, could open another account using my name. He also filed a civil complaint with the county court to formally contest the debts. That would take time, he warned, but it would move. 2 weeks passed. I was hanging laundry in the backyard, my old flannel nightgown, a pair of socks, some dish towels, when my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Mom," she snapped without even a hello, "you filed a lawsuit against Brittany? Are you out of your mind? I just got the court notice. Are you seriously doing this? You've finally gone senile, haven't you?" I let her rant. I stood there with a clothespin in one hand and the phone in the other. Then I said quietly, "I didn't sue because I'm senile. I see because I'm finally not. You all thought I was losing it, and that made it easy to do whatever you wanted. But I'm not crazy, I'm just tired of pretending everything's okay." There was silence. Then Amanda's voice softened dangerously. "Do you really want your granddaughter to go to jail? You're pushing her off a cliff, Mom. She won't recover from this, she'll lose everything." "I'm not pushing her," I said. "I'm protecting myself. Maybe you should have done the same when she dragged you into this." And I hung up. I stood there for a long while, staring at the towels as they fluttered in the wind. It was strange how quiet it felt, not triumphant, not victorious, just clear. For once, everything had a name, a lying. Later that evening, Eleanor showed up with a steaming dish of spaghetti and meatballs. She placed it gently on my kitchen table, sat down across from me, and said, "It's getting cold out there. You eat this. I know you haven't had a proper meal in days." I didn't argue. I didn't say thank you either. I just picked up the fork and took the first bite. The tomato sauce was too salty, the pasta overcooked, the meatballs dry, but I ate it all, every last bite, because it was the first thing I'd tasted that. I didn't come with guilt. It had been a full month since Amanda called me to yell over the phone. Since then, she had tried texting twice and even came by my house once, knocking for 5 minutes straight. I didn't open. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been buried under her silence. This morning, the air was sharp with late autumn wind. I wore my thick wool coat and rode with Eleanor to the Buncombe County Courthouse. She drove us in her old Toyota, humming quietly as if this was just another errand. Halfway through the drive, she glanced over and said, "I'll be sitting right there in the benches. You're not alone today." I nodded. My hands were clasped in my lap the whole ride, cold despite the gloves. At the courthouse steps, I spotted Amanda and Brittany standing near the side entrance. Amanda was texting someone. Brittany looked up just once. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second before she turned away. I didn't look away, but I didn't wave either. The space between us was heavier than anything words could carry. Now inside the courtroom, the heating was too warm, making my skin itch under the coat. Michael, my lawyer, stood up and began calmly laying out the case. The video from my kitchen camera showed Brittany filming me with her phone, instructing me to turn my face side to side. The audio was clear, her voice gave step-by-step directions. He showed the financial records, $30,000 in various credit lines, all drawn into a Chase account ending in 9183 under the name Brittany Dawson. Every detail had been documented, every file dated and signed. Opposing counsel, a young woman with tired eyes and a shaky tone, tried to spin it the only way she could. My client experienced mental distress and acted under duress. She didn't fully grasp the legal ramifications of her behavior. I sat still. I listened, but I didn't feel pity. That part of me had been worn thin long before the court date. Then the judge asked Brittany directly. The courtroom was quiet except for the soft clatter of someone adjusting their water bottle. Brittany spoke, her voice low and strained. "Yes, I opened the accounts. I used her name, but it wasn't for me. My boyfriend owed money, people were threatening him. I didn't know what else to do." Her voice cracked, her hands twisted the fabric of her sleeve. She was crying, visibly shaken, but the courtroom wasn't a place for tears to wash away wrongs. I looked at her, and all I could think of was how far we had fallen from the little girl in pigtails who used to call me my moon because I'd sing to her at night, to this woman who stole my name like it was spare change. The judge reviewed the evidence silently, glasses perched low. Then came the ruling. Miss Brittany Dawson is found guilty of identity theft and financial fraud. Due to her cooperation and lack of prior offenses, the court assigns a suspended sentence of 2 years, full restitution of $30,000 to the victim, a 5-year ban on opening any financial credit accounts, and mandatory participation in a financial responsibility education course. I exhaled slowly, not with relief exactly, but with certainty, like something that had been foggy for too long had finally come into focus. Outside in the hallway, Brittany broke down sobbing. I saw her fumbling with her phone, dialing someone who clearly didn't answer. She leaned against the wall, crying harder. Amanda brushed past me at the exit without a word. Her face was flushed red, her eyes glassy. She didn't look at me, and I didn't stop her. Near the steps, a few onlookers whispered to one another. "Did you hear that old woman had to take her granddaughter to court just to stop the girl from stealing from her?" Another voice added, "Imagine your own daughter standing by and letting that happen." I didn't turn to look. I hadn't come here for sympathy or revenge. I had come to say no more, loud enough that it couldn't be mistaken. Back inside, Michael leaned toward me and asked quietly, "Mrs. Givens, do you want me to forward the case to the DA's office? We have grounds for criminal prosecution if you'd like to press felony charges." Through the glass doors, I could still see Brittany sitting on the courthouse bench, hugging herself, wiping her face with her sleeve like a child. For a moment, I felt the tiniest flicker of something, not forgiveness, but recognition. I shook my head. "No, I don't need anyone going to prison. I just need them to know I'm not easy prey." He nodded once, then began packing up. 1 week later, a news article surfaced on a small local media site. The headline read, "Elderly woman outsmarts TikTok scam by granddaughter, $30,000 in fraud revealed." The article included a quote from a cybersecurity expert: "Biometric video trends may look harmless but can be repurposed for criminal verification. Seniors are especially vulnerable." At the end, the journalist had added, "Let this be a reminder, sometimes the quietest person in the room carries the sharpest truth." And just like that, the truth was no longer mine to bear alone. It stood up, spoke out, and finally, it was heard. Saturday afternoons had always been quiet around my house. I usually spent them tidying up, wiping the kitchen counters, folding laundry, mopping the hallway floor. That day was no different. The floor smelled faintly of lemon cleanser, and a small patch of sunlight warmed the edge of the rug by the door. I was bent over with the mop when I heard a soft knock. It wasn't the delivery man or the neighborhood kids trying to sell candy. The knock was hesitant, 3 gentle taps, like someone unsure if they should be there. I opened the door and found Amanda standing on my porch. Her skin looked pale under the late afternoon sun, shadows carved deep under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. Her shoulders slumped under a light jacket, and her lips were pressed into a thin line. Brittany wasn't with her. She looked up, and her voice came out small. "Mom, I came to apologize for Brittany. She still can't bring herself to face you." I didn't respond. Right away, my hand stayed on the doorknob. The air between us was cold, not because of the weather, but because something between us had long since turned to stone. I finally asked, "She can't or she doesn't want to?" Amanda's mouth parted slightly, but no words came. She blinked, looked away, and her hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse. We stood there like that for a moment, me in the doorway and her on the steps. Then she nodded once and said softly, "Take care of yourself, Mom." She turned and walked away, no hug, no tears, just the sound of her footsteps fading down the walkway. I didn't slam the door shut, but I didn't invite her in either. Some cracks, if touched again, only split deeper. The days after that were quieter than I had expected. I didn't hear from Amanda or Brittany, no phone calls, no emails, no birthday cards, not even a Christmas greeting. Though I knew they both still had my address, it was as if our relationship had been wiped clean, like a chalkboard after the final lesson has been erased. At first, it felt empty, lonely even. I'd stand by the kitchen sink doing dishes and half expect the phone to ring or to hear Brittany's laughter in a memory drifting through the house. But the silence eventually became something else, something like peace, without the weight of hoping they change. I could finally breathe. A few weeks later, I visited Michael's office one last time. The sky was clear that day, and I brought a folder with all my paperwork. Inside were the deed to the house, my identification, and the final draft of my new will. We sat across from each other at his desk. I watched him flip through the pages until he came to the signature line. I took the pen, steady in my hand, and signed. He looked at me. "Are you certain about this? No family listed as beneficiary?" I smiled politely, but my voice was firm. "No one in that family considers me theirs anymore. The house, the one I had paid off with years of savings, the one where I baked birthday cakes and bandaged scraped knees, would go to the Buncombe Senior Support Foundation. Let it house someone who needs it. Let it mean something more than memories that now felt like bruises." Not long after, I enrolled in an online course hosted by the community library, Basic Financial Literacy for Adults Over 60. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I logged on with a warm cup of tea and a notebook. I learned how to review credit reports, freeze credit lines, and set up 2-factor authentication on my phone and email. I even learned how to create strong passwords, ones that didn't include pet names or birthdays. I changed everything. My phone, my email, even my new smart washer now had a passcode. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't waiting for someone to rescue me. I was doing it myself. It wasn't long before the library senior coordinator asked if I'd be willing to help teach others. Every Saturday morning, I walked to the community center near the farmers market and met with a small group, 7 or 8 other older folks who had gone through their own scares or losses. Some had been tricked by fake Amazon calls, others had family members who'd borrowed money that never came back. I didn't lecture, I told stories. I told them there's no such thing as just playing around with your face on camera. That one filter video could be all someone needs to take a loan in your name. I watched their heads nod, I saw recognition in their eyes. It made everything I'd been through, every humiliation, every quiet heartbreak, feel like it had a purpose. That spring, in April, the community hosted an annual senior gathering at the local hall. There were raffle tables, potluck dishes, and a small stage with folding chairs. I sat in the back, sipping lemonade. When they called my name, the room quieted as I made my way to the front. They handed me a framed certificate for dedication in protecting older adults from digital fraud and abuse. I didn't cry, I didn't need to. The applause was loud, but the thing that hit me hardest was the sight of Eleanor standing in the middle of the crowd, clapping first, her smile wide and proud. I held the frame close to my chest. Something inside me, not forgiveness, not closure, just softened. That night, I returned home and made myself a pot of Earl Grey. I curled up in the armchair by the window, the same one I had stared out of so many evenings before. The steam from the teacup curled in the air like breath in winter. A lamp glowed beside me, casting light on a book left open on the coffee table. Through the window, the sky stretched dark and endless. The stars looked clearer than usual, maybe because I had finally cleared something in myself. I thought of everything that had happened, the silence, the betrayal, the courtroom, the apology that came too late. I whispered, not to anyone in particular but to the air itself. They thought I was confused. I was just quiet, and sometimes silence doesn't mean you don't know, it means you've seen too much already and there's nothing left worth saying. Then I took another sip of tea, leaned back, and let the night be enough. What do you think about Dolores's story? Should she have taken it to court or just frozen her credit and quietly moved on? If it were you, what would you have done? I truly love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This story reminds us that trust, even within a family, should have its limits. Love doesn't mean handing over your personal information, your finances, or your future without caution. Dolores believed she was helping her loved ones but ended up betrayed, in debt, and alone. It's a harsh truth, not everyone you love will protect you the way you hope. That's why financial awareness isn't just for the young. No matter your age, it's never too late to learn how to safeguard your identity, monitor your accounts, and say no when something doesn't feel right. Trust wisely and protect yourself. If this story touched you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you'd like to hear more real stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to Forgotten Mothers. Thank you so much for being here. From my heart to yours, I wish you peace, health, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing your story still matters.